Recap. Last September, Cindy's company went under. She took this hard because she loved her workplace, loved her colleagues, and loved her boss. When Cindy came home and delivered the news, I asked if she wanted me to introduce her to my boss. Cindy said yes, and I texted my boss on the spot saying that she'd been hired in a 3-month probationary position. Unfortunately, things didn't pan out. To be frank, Cindy was a horrible employee. Last Monday, we went out to lunch together, and Cindy ate way too slowly. I was looking at the clock and encouraging her to get a move on, but at the end of the meal, right when we had to leave to make it back on time, Cindy decided she wanted another refill of her soda. I told Cindy that I was leaving, with or without her. Cindy played chicken with me here, thinking that if she refused to move, I'd have no choice but to wait. But I walked to my car and drove back. Cindy showed up 20 minutes later, visually flustered. Last Friday, Cindy got her final judgment for her probationary period. Due to poor punctuality and general lack of direction, my company decided not to hire her for a full-time position. Cindy blames me. She says I made her late and that I ruined everything. Update: am I the idiot for ditching my girlfriend at a restaurant, which contributed to her failing her probationary period? Last week, I, 27 male, talked about how my girlfriend, Cindy, 26, blew her probationary period for the job I got her. She was chronically late and unproductive, and she took 90-minute marathon lunch breaks. She claims that I sabotaged her because I left her at a restaurant instead of being late when getting back to work. Anyway, Cindy decided she was going to take some time off of work for her mental health. Knowing she had no savings, I asked how she would contribute to rent, groceries, and utilities, but Cindy said that wasn't my concern. I decided to be upfront and flat out tell her not to expect me to financially support her. She called me a low provider, whatever that means. It's also not right because I'm more of a no provider. I'm not into arrangements where I financially support a woman for companionship. At this point, I knew that our relationship was over, but I decided to stay in the apartment we rented for the next 2 months, as we paid our rent in full until the end of May, and then leave. Then Cindy began taking steps to actively sabotage me at work. For example, I couldn't find my shoes when I was getting ready for work last Friday. After letting me look for them for 15 minutes, Cindy finally said she'd washed them. Cindy has never washed anything besides a plate or her own laundry, but on Friday morning she abruptly decided to wash my shoes. Right, they were soaking wet. I had to wear an old pair of Crocs that were 2 sizes too small to the office that day. On my way home, I bought new shoes and kept them in my car. Then Cindy began spamming me with texts during a meeting on Saturday, one I had told her I was having, saying there was a guy banging on our door. She insisted I needed to come home right away. I checked our Ring camera and saw nothing. When I texted her back saying so, she said it must have been the neighbour or something. It's worth mentioning here that I can see the neighbour's door on the camera too, and nobody was banging on it either. I got the picture of what was going on and realised the next escalation would be having my tyres slashed or brakes cut. After work that day, I returned to our apartment, gathered my belongings, and left. Cindy naturally went off the rails, but I got out safely. I'm at my buddy's house for a few days until I can find a new living situation. Thank you for all the advice you gave me. Wow, she really ramped things up quickly, didn't she? Yeah, I agree with letting your boss know she might try something to make you look bad. Ordinarily, I would never discuss my personal problems at my job. Still, since she feels resentful to both the company for not hiring her and you for not wanting to support her while she takes a mental health break, she may do something to try to get you fired. I half expect you to come back with an update in the next couple of weeks where she's claiming she's pregnant with your child. Please be cautious. My guess is that with all the scrolling she did on her phone under her desk instead of actually working, she stumbled upon Tradwife TikTok. And she was banking on a free ride despite her sounding like she does none of the housework the tradwife trend implies, thinking she can just get a free ride. If you can, next time you're at the apartment, try to take as many pictures of the place as you can without her knowledge. I wouldn't put it past her to try and flip the script and say you trashed the place in anger at her or something and mess you out of the deposit. OP needs to let the building manager know he moved out because of domestic abuse. Many places now have it where you can break a lease without penalty if leaving an abusive relationship. They also need to let them know they've left in case the ex decides to destroy the place and leave him on the hook for everything. Thank you for the update. I'm sorry that Cindy is so completely out of her mind crazy. I, 28 female, previously had a 4-year relationship with my best friend's brother, 30, but we ended things 2 years ago on less than favourable terms. While there was no infidelity involved, both of us harbored significant resentment towards each other. Despite the breakup, I maintained a strong connection with his family. In fact, I'm closer to them than he ever was. His parents view me as part of their family and include me in holiday gatherings and family events. Additionally, since my best friend and I have been nearly inseparable since childhood, I saw no reason to sever ties with his family after our split. Recently, my best friend learned, through an acquaintance rather than directly from her brother, that he's gotten married and welcomed newborn twins. This news shocked us all, including his family, who were unaware that he was even in a relationship. When questioned about this revelation, my ex expressed that he saw no need to inform anyone within his family because, as he put it, why would I tell my ex and her family anything about my kids? He believes that since I remain close to his family, they align with me rather than him. Moreover, during one confrontation with my best friend, he told my best friend that he feels sorry for her future kids because she'll just throw them away for their first ex, implying she should be concerned for her future children because she might disregard them, just like their parents did to him, due to her continued friendship with me. My best friend is devastated. Her parents are very upset, and now everybody looks at me like I'm the cause for them not knowing. They haven't pushed me out, but all this is very difficult for my best friend. She says she doesn't blame me, but is convinced that had I been out of the picture, her brother would have opened up and stopped hiding his family. I don't think I did anything wrong. I didn't pressure his parents to stay close to me. I didn't tell him to cut off his own family. But I can still see why my best friend is feeling so stuck. So, am I the idiot? You are the idiot, come on. You knew what you were doing. You don't share relationship issues with family. It's one thing to remain friends with his sister, it's another to show up to all their holidays when you know he'll avoid going if you're there. I think you'd be pretty naive to not be aware of what was happening, and I'm guessing a part of you enjoyed it. Don't act all shocked now. Ultimately, the blame is on his family that let it all happen, but you're not innocent. Agreed, you are the idiot. You and his whole family. You can't seriously tell me you didn't know all of you were pushing him away. Why the heck should you go to their holidays and family functions? You could still be friends with someone without being in their home at every event. Right, now everyone is surprised he moved on and had his own family. Here comes this idiot now talking about, oh, it's unfair the grandparents can't have a relationship with the children. Which, that decision was made years ago when you needed to get lost. Now it's too late. He doesn't want to have a relationship, and now you're bowing out and acting all self-righteous. No, forget all that. This witch ruined the relationship with their son, brother, future sister-in-law and grandchildren, and now is leaving the family that took her in to act like the bigger person. Some people are just evil. Update. After reading some of the perspectives here, I've had time to reflect. I won't deny that my presence has complicated things, but my ex distanced himself from his family long before we broke up. He chose to cut ties and is using me as an excuse. His parents have always wanted grandkids, and if my presence made it harder for them to be in their grandkids' lives, I decided to step back for them, not for him. When I heard he blamed me for his parents not meeting his kids, I stopped hanging around them. After my best friend confronted him, she told their parents everything. They immediately called him and are heading up to meet his wife, kids and in-laws. My best friend, however, was banned from coming because he called her the golden child, so she's staying with me. We're currently reviewing some of the comments, getting intoxicated, and doing some internet stalking. At this point, there's really nothing else I can do. I could text him and apologize for pushing him out, but I know he doesn't want to hear from me. Just had a fight with my wife. She was washing dishes and I was super thirsty and she was using the tap. Instead of just stepping aside for 20 seconds max so I could get a glass of water, she made me wait my turn for 3 minutes. It doesn't sound like a long time, but standing there with a glass, super thirsty. She calls me impatient, and I simply will never understand how you would stop washing dishes for 10 seconds to allow your spouse a glass of water. But of course, I had to apologize. Quite sad about it, as I just never want to argue, but that triggered me. Was I right to get annoyed, or should I have just let her have the sink till it was free? Am I the idiot for wanting a drink immediately? Was she washing dishes created while feeding you or your kids? Because if so, you're saying she inconvenienced you while she was actively doing something convenient for you. A great way to get access to the water would be to take over doing the dishes for her. You can wait 3 minutes for a glass of water. You're an adult. Even a toddler could wait 3 minutes for a cup of water. Were you dying of thirst? No? You can wait then, or use a different tap. Sometimes getting the water to a good temp for washing dishes is hard, hot enough to kill bacteria but not hot enough to burn your hands. Or maybe she was just in a flow and wanted to get it done. Or maybe the hot water in your place is crap, so if she swaps it back to cold, then back to hot, it takes time. Either way, you aren't going to die by waiting 3 minutes for a drink of water. You are the idiot. I can't believe you're allowed to get married at age 4. Quite frankly, my toddler has more patience than this guy and has for a while now. How would you like it if you were mowing the lawn and you had to stop and wait 20 seconds while she stood in front of you drinking water out of the garden hose? You may have questions. Questions like, why do you have to do that right now? And why don't you get water from another source or wait until I'm finished? Actively impeding your partner from doing shared responsibilities to accommodate you equals idiot. OP update. Thanks everyone. Kind of blew my mind as to the number of replies. I've read pretty much all of the comments here to the detriment of much needed sleep. In summary, I should not have been so selfish, entitled, and effectively expected my wife to stop what she was doing to enable me to do what I wanted for myself. I've learned that lesson. It's a life lesson, really. I also believed I was a pretty good judge of what is reasonable, and again, this has corrected this assumption. I will, however, regardless of circumstance, never prioritize dishes over anyone wishing for a glass of water. I just step aside. That's just who I am. My 36 male father passed away when I was 20 and my mother didn't cope well. She got better with time, but she didn't attempt to pursue another relationship until 15 years later. She's been dating Jim for 2 years. I don't hate Jim, but I don't like him either. He drinks a lot, my mother has had to cancel on her several times because he was intoxicated, has made several offensive jokes to my brother, 43 male, that I didn't appreciate, and is overall a pretty unpleasant person to be around. Still, he seems to genuinely love my mother and makes her happy, so my brother and I don't interfere. One problem I do have with the relationship is that my mother has been trying to get my children, tween male and kindergartner female, to form a grandparent bond with Jim. He's also been trying to take on a grandfather role, which neither my wife, 34 years old, nor I want for the kids. They don't try to push boundaries too much, but we've had some minor arguments in the past. Anyway, my daughter had her first ever dance recital last September. There was a limit of 4 guests per child. The kids usually ask us to invite one of their grandparents to events like this, but my mother was out of town. I didn't even ask her and my in-laws were busy. Instead, my daughter invited my brother, wife and son to join me. My mother and Jim visited us during the weekend and she saw pictures from the recital for the first time in a photo album. She asked why my brother was there and not her, and I reminded her she was traveling at the time. She said, "Well, Jim was in town." I'll be honest, we didn't even consider inviting Jim back in December and neither did my kids. I told my mother that my daughter chose to invite her uncle and we respected that. Then Jim turned to my daughter and told her she could invite him next time Grandma wasn't around. My wife chimed in and said she could invite whoever she wanted. After they left, my mother called me. She said she was upset that we weren't making any efforts to welcome Jim into the family and that we were depriving our children of a wonderful grandfather. I told her that we would never force our children to like him or spend time with him if they didn't want to, and that wasn't up for discussion. We ended up having an argument over this before I hung up on her. I spoke with a few family members yesterday who think I'm being too harsh on Jim. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. This was your daughter's dance recital, and she decided who she wanted to invite. You showed excellent parenting here, allowing her to make mature decisions and backing her decisions. You showed her that not only is she capable of making mature decisions, but you also have her back. This was a situation that had absolutely nothing to do with your mother or Jim. Their immaturity inserted themselves into your daughter's decision in a childish attempt to manipulate her into regretting her decision and making her feel like the bad guy. He's not their grandfather, though. He's your mother's boyfriend. She's not entitled to make their relationship fit a title she thinks it deserves. Also, if the man is so irresponsible that he prioritizes drinking to the point where plans made in advance have to be cancelled, then why on earth would anyone think sane and safe parents would encourage a relationship with him? If I were you, I'd tell your mother exactly that. We will absolutely not be encouraging our children to spend time with a man who clearly has a drinking problem. We will not be building a grandparent relationship with a man who cannot be trusted with the safety of our children. Full stop. If she makes the decision to continue justifying his behavior or forcing the issue, then you'll need to create some space and see her less often. My young teen nephew came to live with me in December. This is temporary, but we're not sure how long he'll be here arrangement. My husband and I will keep him for as long as it takes, but I'll be honest, I could see him staying for years. The reason he's here is because he's full of anger about his dad, who's my older brother, who got remarried 18 months ago. My nephew has felt like his dad's stepkids get more of his time, attention and love than him. It's turned into hatred for his step-siblings, a kindergartner and a young grammar schooler. In December, he unleashed all that anger on the kids and yelled at them. He told them he hated them, he wished they'd die so he could have his dad back, and any number of things. My brother had taken his focus off his son a lot after remarrying and was shocked by the outburst. Calming my nephew down took hours because he yelled at his dad when he was finished yelling at the kids. My sister-in-law attempted to step in, but my nephew yelled at her and then went back to yelling at his dad. It was the first time my brother realized his son was angry. I hadn't seen them since my brother's wedding, but it was a big change. My nephew had mixed emotions on the wedding day, and we talked about it, but he wasn't angry. But in the following months, anger became a concern and my brother didn't see it. After talking to my nephew when he was calmer, he realized more outbursts were going to happen, which led him to reaching out and asking me if my husband and I could let my nephew stay for a while. He was honest that he didn't know how long, but he didn't want to send his stepkids packing and didn't want my nephew to feel like this was the end of the marriage and it would be back to just the two of them, so he didn't want to move out with him. I told him, assuming he'd arranged for therapy and everything else, that was fine. My brother sends a weekly amount to cover expenses for my nephew. My brother set up a therapist for him where I live. We're a couple of hours from each other, and my nephew is doing school virtually right now. My brother drives out to see him once a week and joins him for therapy some weeks, but he's not happy with what the therapist is saying. He confronted me on it and was trying to blame me for the choice of therapist and because therapy wasn't a quick fix. He told me what good is it doing if he's here and with a therapist and we're not helping. He asked what sort of therapist I was bringing him to. Those were the kinds of comments. I reminded him he chose the therapist and I was helping him, so he needed to stop blaming me. My brother told me there wasn't another option, as much as others might disagree, which makes me think the therapist suggested something he disagreed with. But my brother left angry, and he called me a couple of days later and told me I don't need to turn on him, and when does he have a heck of a clue what to do? And he's still coming to terms with the fact his son hates him and hates innocent kids who did nothing wrong. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. A zillion bucks says that brother was hoping that the therapist would just tell the kid to basically suck it up and deal, and that would be that. Instead, crap probably got real, and rather than accepting responsibility for his part in things, it's easier to blame everyone else. That poor kid. Your brother is a massive idiot who is abandoning his child for the sake of a new wife and stepfamily. LOL. When a neglectful parent says they don't like what the therapist is saying, that always translates to, they aren't excusing my crappy actions and are pointing out I'm a bad parent. Not the idiot, OP. Thank you for being there for your nephew. God knows that poor kid needs someone in his corner. Also, good on you for not coddling your brother. You nailed it. He expects therapy to fix his kid, so the kid can be a good kid and integrate into the happy blended family. Crap doesn't work that way. Kids don't work that way. The kid used to have 100% of his dad's time. Now he has 25% at most and probably a lot less if his dad ignores him. He basically lost his father. Of course he's angry. Until he realizes he messed up, he's never going to have a good relationship with his kid. I'm calling it now. Opie's going to raise the kid to adulthood. Brother will constantly talk about how he'd love to have his son back, but won't do anything to make that happen.